Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to just take a few minutes to have everybody be able to come into the Zoom room or whatever we call these rooms these days, these virtual conference rooms, these virtual rooms. Um, and we'll just give a couple, just maybe 30 seconds before we begin. Alrighty. And I hope everybody is settled. And I hope everybody is ready. And okay, I think we will begin. Welcome, everybody. My name is John Raphael, and I'm the Director of Educational Services at the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals. And thank you all for joining us today for something we believe is very critical for particularly direct support professionals. Direct support professionals are going to be at the intersection of the home and community-based settings rule. And we have two people that are going to really help us understand that intersection between direct support professionals, between this home and community-based settings rule, and person-centered supports for the people that direct support professionals support. So we are just thrilled you're all here. I have a couple things. One, we have closed captioning available. And to access closed captioning, you just go to the closed captioning bar in your toolbar, in your Zoom toolbar, hit it and hit subtitles, and there you go. And there'll be a transcript available. This presentation will not, it's a very brief but also packed presentation. There will be no time for QA. If you do have any pertinent or burning questions, there'll be some contact information at the end so that you can reach Tanya and Monica. Let's get to it. I'd like to introduce to you our presenters today. First, welcome Tanya M. Richmond, MSW, LCSW, and partner at Support Development Associates. Welcome, Tanya. And we have Monica Robinson, a consultant for and with the New York Alliance for Inclusion and Innovation and the Learning Community for Person-Centered Practices. So both of you, thank you for your time and take it away, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And am I driving the slides or is someone driving for me?
I'm going to drive for you.
Gotcha. Okay. So welcome very much. We'd like to thank you first for being here with us today. And I'll just give you a brief rundown what we're going to talk about on the next slide, our agenda. We're going to talk very briefly about what is expected of us because of the HCBS rule. We're going to talk really briefly about side-by-side decision making. And a little bit about the core person-centered practices. Monica's going to take you through the skills and how they apply to the work that you do, the boundaries around choices that exist for all of us, and we're going to talk a little bit about the current reality that we're all living in. So the expectation is that we continue to be person-centered, even though there are all these pressures and restrictions around us right now that may be impacting that. We'll talk about rebalancing, helping people have a voice, and continuing to learn. And then we're going to share just a few resources with you. So on our next slide, to help you have some foundational understanding of person-centered terminology, there's a few core concepts that are helpful. There won't be a test, but it's always helpful to just kind of have some shared language. So person-centered thinking is truly about that. It's a shift in the way we think that helps create opportunities and resources for people to live lives that are in balance between those things that are important to them and important for them. And Monica will share that concept in deeper detail with you soon. Planning is a way for us to make that concrete. So it's a way for when people use home and community-based services and supports, it's a way to have a plan with them that represents that balance from their perspective. And it's a way they can describe what they want or paint a picture of what they want their life to be like. And finally, person-centered practice is really more about that global alignment of resources and services and policies and on, that helps people have access to the community and really ensure that they receive services in a way that helps them achieve their individual goals, or receive services in a way that reflects the balance from their perspective. In the next slide, I'm going to tell you what that HCBS rule is. And it's not uncommon to be in training with folks and they've never heard of it and don't know if it applies to them. And that's okay. We're going to give you just enough information to make that clearer for you. But the HCBS rule, or the Home and Community-Based Services Rule, is a federal regulation, and it was enacted in March of 2014. And it's around standards to promote community involvement and independence for people who receive services and supports through certain Medicaid-funded home and community-based services streams. And home and community-based services are very broad. There can be all kinds of them out there. So that rule established a lot of new standards around person-centered planning. And a couple of those are around person-centered service plans for every person who receives Medicaid-funded services through HCBS, and also ways to make modification to the rule standards for provider-owned and controlled settings that are done on a case-by-case basis. And we're not going to get into the deep details of this. I just want you to know that there is an overarching federal rule. And sometimes when we have a rule or a regulation that comes down from on high, I know for myself, I've been a social worker for more than 30 years. I get really pushy about that. I kind of feel resistant. And the first thing I think is, what are they doing to me now? So regulations sometimes feel like, or rules sometimes feel like, there's a focus on compliance rather than quality. So they want me to check off boxes. It's really important for us to understand that this rule is in place so that we can do more of that stuff that we're really good at, that you as DSPs I know are really good at, which is using your values around providing supports and services to help people have more of the lives they want. This rule opens the door for that. So I look at it in a good light, and it's probably the first time I've ever liked a rule or regulation that was thrown at me by the federal government. The next slide, please. So these standards are commonly referred to as the setting standards, and they apply to all settings where people are receiving Medicaid-funded HCBS services, where they live and receive those services. I'm not going to go through this in deep detail, but there are a few of these pieces that really do connect to the work that you do as a DSP. You are constantly involved in really making sure that people have as much autonomy as possible, independence in making decisions. You're standing side by side with them as they make decisions on a daily basis. You're thinking about their right to privacy, the right to respect and dignity, and that they have the freedom to do those things that they want to do. And in addition to that, you're helping them as they do things like look for employment, engage in employment, work in those community settings, engage with others that they want to be involved with in their life. And in addition to that, you're constantly thinking about how to support them to have more of those things that are important to them in their lives. And the settings that are laid out here, or the standards that are laid out here, are all a part of that HCBS Final Rule. They apply to all settings. So the work that you do is integral to making sure the HCBS rule is carried out as it's intended. Next slide. So in plain language, what that means is this is what's expected of everybody who is providing services and supports, all services and supports that are party to the HCBS rule. In plain language, it means people have a choice, that they're in the center of all the decisions about things like where they live, who they live with, what they do with their time, what they do with the resources, and that could be money resources, people resources, time resources, what services and supports they receive, and who provides those services and supports. And as you engage with people in person-centered planning and providing services and supports in a person-centered way, you start with that concept of sorting what's important to them and important for. So you know what they want in terms of these decisions because you've listened to the core of that person. You've listened to what matters most to them. And again, Monica will cover some of that with you a little bit later. Next slide, please. So very quickly, just a few of the following person-centered planning standards are around making sure that we have the information that we need to support the person so that they can, as we say, be in the center of or drive the planning process whenever possible. the work that you do on a daily basis as you engage with people is what informs a plan. So you learn about what works in supporting people. And as you communicate that back to whoever is in charge of putting that plan together, that information really is that we've learned really is what should go back into a plan to help to support the person better. And plans also include people who are chosen by the person. So there may be friends and family members who know a lot about the person, who like and admire them, and should definitely be a part of planning. But you, as a person who works with them closely, may know things that will be very important for planning as well. Plans are also expected to happen at times and locations that are convenient to the person, and they also need to be timely, meaning I don't schedule all the changes in my life for September 30th, and I don't think you do either. Changes happen, things happen, we adjust. And so as that happens, we need to be able to respond through the planning process and make sure that we are accommodating changes in a person's life. We also want to make sure that we're paying attention to those outcomes that people define for themselves, meaning that we get to know the person, we know what matters most to them, and we help them paint the picture of what life should look like from their perspective. Next slide. We're going to talk about plain language throughout this. I think is an important concept of person-centered plan requirements. And that's why we had that slide for you, like in plain language, this is what this means. But person-centered plan requirements are really about the delivery of services in the way that most reflects what the person wants for themselves. At the same time, we're paying attention to what keeps them healthy and safe. And that's what we've done well forever. We've always kept people healthy and safe. We do that almost on autopilot. But it's harder sometimes to really slow down and think about what matters most to this person and how can we take that into consideration and provide supports in the way that matters most to them. It also takes into consideration the culture of the person's served. And that becomes something that overlays all decisions, right? Culture impacts all of the standards in the HCBS rule and certainly all things in our lives. And then finally there, I said to you, plain language is an important part of this. We want everybody who's involved in that process or involved in that person's life to be able to pick up that plan and know what to do with it, including the person if they use written or spoken language. If they can't tell us with words, we want to listen through observation. We want to listen through the people who know them best. So we really need to make sure that we're doing an honest try of understanding from the person's perspective what life looks like. Next slide, please. Additionally, the person-centered plan requirements include some things that will be very familiar to you, things about people's strengths and preferences, but also their clinical and support needs and their desired outcomes. And I think too often historically what's happened is outcomes really focus more on our convenience or the capacity of the organization rather than what the person truly wants. So this is a different way really of thinking with people about outcomes and what they mean for a person's quality of life. And on the next slide, this is really about how we help people make decisions. So we make decisions not about what is best for the person, but truly about what is most important to the person, taking into consideration those things that are important for them in terms of their health and safety. We cannot be partners in problem solving or make decisions from a side-by-side stance if we don't understand what's important to the person. So we should find ourselves engaged in using our person-centered skills to understand what's important to the person, give them information that connects to the decision that they're trying to make, and also that connects to the things that are important to them, because you can give them all kinds of options, but if they don't connect to what matters most to that person, those are not going to be good options for them. You might also engage other people in helping make decisions. So family members and friends, people they trust, can they be consulted for help? And are you presenting information in ways that people can understand best? So some people do well with spoken word or stories. Sometimes people might need a picture or a graph of some sort or a drawing, or there's all kinds of things we can use as examples to help a person really connect to the concept of what those options are. And then finally, have you given the person the best chance to make the decision for themselves? Too often, I think we make decisions for people when really some of those decisions they should be making on their own with our support in helping them think through the options that may work best.
Thank you, Tanya. So now we're going to talk about how you get this information. So how do you find out someone's strengths? How do you find out someone's preferences? And direct support professionals are doing this all the time on a daily basis. They're discovering new things about a person, what's important to them, and really also finding out some support needs, so what's important for them. Now, the learning community uses a set of skills or tools to help in this discovery process. We use a relationship map, and that relationship map allows us to find out family members that are really important to that person, friends that are really important to that person, maybe some support staff that are supporting them at work, maybe support staff are supporting them at school, even support staff that are supporting them at home. And again, that map allows us to see all of those important people in that person's life. Rituals and routines really helps us look at, certain pace of life someone wants to live by. It helps us look at places that people like to go, because we all have certain rituals and routines that we follow. And this allows us, again, to really find out what's important to a person. We also look at communication. We look at communication beyond written communication. We look at people's behaviors. So what is somebody telling us through their behaviors? And I would say that behaviors really only become an issue or a problem when we don't understand what that behavior means. We also use what we call a 2-minute drill. 2-minute drill is a very quick way to gather information from someone. So say you're heading out to the farmer's market one day, you get to the farmer's market and it's closed. So you might turn to the person receiving support and have a couple-minute conversation with them, ask them questions. What else would you like to do today? Do you want to go to the park? Would you like to go out for lunch? So it's a quick way to gather some information. Good day, bad day is a way for us to not only document, because I think historically direct support professionals do a really good job and they're asked to document things that are going wrong and how they've helped someone fix it. But this is also a way to look at the good things that are happening and things that make a good day for someone, so we can continue to help them have good days more often. We also look at everyday learning skills. What that allows us to do is all that information that we've discovered, we get to put it into practice. We get to help people live those important twos and important for it every day. And we get to learn from it. So we're learning what's working and not working in that person's life. We're looking at maybe new things to try and what we've learned from what we've tried and what we should try next based on what we're learning. Also, a learning log is a way, again, not to just document, say, goals. And I know DSPs are very used to documenting goals because they understand that service delivery equals funding, right? But we also want to learn about all the other stuff that's happening, not just what's written on that goal sheet. We also use management skills. Those management skills allow us to look at our role and the role we play in the lives of those people receiving supports. So we define what our core responsibilities are. We define where staff can use their judgment and creativity, and also what's not our responsibility. So if a direct support professional is telling me everything to that person, it's kind of a red flag that maybe they're doing things that aren't their responsibility. So how can we work more people into that person's circle of supports? And then matching is our way of really making sure we're trying our hardest to match the right people in support. So we're finding staff that have similar interests with the people they're supporting, or we're finding personality characteristics that meld well together and don't exist like water and vinegar. But at the center of that is balancing the important to and important for. That is the core concept of person-centered thinking. So we're trying to find that balance between keeping someone healthy and also making sure that people are happy, and finding the connection between the two, which is super important. And if you don't take anything away from today except this concept of finding out how to make that connection, we've done a really good job. So what am I talking about important to and important for? Important to is something that makes someone feel happy, makes them feel content, makes them feel fulfilled. And as Tanya would say, something that you hold close to your heart. So think about relationships that people have. Think about purpose and meaning. All of us want to have some sense of purpose. Also, the people we're supporting, it's the same thing for them. Status and control. There isn't one of us in this session today that doesn't like to feel some sense of control in their life. And it's the same thing with people we're supporting. Things to do, places to go. Again, I talked about rituals and routines. Pace of life is important. So I think of people that I know that are city folks that want to be on the go all the time, and they don't mind noise and they don't mind crowds. And then I also know people that prefer to be out in the country where it's a little bit slower and it's not as loud and there's less crowds. And also things to have are important. All of us like to own stuff and be able to call something our own. And it's the same thing again with people we're supporting. So important too is really defined by that person and how they see quality of life. It's not what we think should be important to someone. So if planting is important to someone, that's what it is. It's important to them. It's not our place to say whether or not it should be. And we need to include important to, or what's important to someone, not only with the words that they're saying, but also through their actions. Now, Tanya had mentioned that before. So when words and behavior are in conflict, we want to make sure we're paying attention to that behavior. And if anyone here lives with somebody else, just think about a day when someone's come home from work or school and they slam their bag down and maybe they're banging around in the kitchen and you say, hey, are you doing okay? Is everything all right? And they tell you, yeah, I'm fine. Well, you all know based on their behavior that things aren't okay. And that's really what we're asking you to do with people you support as well. Pay attention to behaviors. Now, important for, again, as Tanya said, we do a really good job. Historically, we've always done a good job. We focus on health and safety, maybe a little bit too much emphasis on health and safety, but health and safety. So we're talking about physical health and safety, so wellness and prevention. So think, diet and exercise, emotional health and safety. So we're providing additional maybe medical support needs, clinical support needs based on that. But also what's important for is being a valued member of a person's community. And we're not just talking about the macro community. So we're not just talking about the town they live in or the state they live in. We're also talking about micro, the smaller communities that people have chosen for themselves. So maybe they're a part of the softball league, or maybe they're a part of a book club. Now they want to be, or we want to help that person be valued in that community. So we want to make sure we're helping them show up to the softball practice on time. We want to make sure that they're putting forth an effort like everyone else is out on the field. So how are we helping people be valued in their selected communities? So the balance between the two, it's not about either or. So it's not about paying attention to health and safety and being valued in your community without looking at the context of what's important too. So if it's really important to me to live on my own, then we start to put the supports in place to reduce risk. So it's safe for me to live on my own. And it's not about assuring safety and health at the cost of satisfaction. So we're not bubble wrapping people and preventing health and safety, preventing people from living a life because we're overemphasizing the health and safety part. So when we find this balance, and there is a way to find the balance. So if there is something that's important for someone and it's linked to something important to, they're going to do it. It will happen. If something's important for us, but it's not important to us, we're not going to be interested in doing it. So think about the people that you're supporting and they're working on goals that they often refuse to work on, or they're tolerating that goal and they're doing it because you're asking them to do it, but they really don't want to do it. I would guess that it probably hasn't been linked to something that's important to them. So you need to investigate it a little bit further. And if people, or we want people to attend to what's important for them, there has to be that connection to what's important too. Now, my mom struggled for years with her weight, and every year she would go to the doctor, at her physical, the doctor would tell her she needed to lose weight because it was going to affect her health. And every year she would agree, and every year she wouldn't do anything about it. And it gradually got worse. And she wasn't doing anything about it because it wasn't affecting her important two. She was still able to travel to Florida every year like she liked to do for a couple of weeks. She was still able to go to the flea markets. She was still able to play with the grandkids. But what happened is over time, the weight that she was gaining was affecting all of those important twos in her life. She was uncomfortable on airplanes flying to Florida. When she got there, she couldn't move around as easily as she used to. There was a lot of pressure on her joints. She couldn't go to flea markets the way she used to and spend hours there because, again, she couldn't move around as easily and it was painful for her. And the most important thing is she couldn't spend time with the grandkids. So all of that important too was affected. And because it was affected, she decided to do what was important for her, which was lose that weight and pay attention to her health. So we found that connection, and actually she's much happier today. So the learning community does use this tool, the important to, important for. This is a grid that we use. You don't have to use this official grid. You could take a sheet of paper and split it down the middle and set up 2 columns. But again, this is a side-by-side, us being able to look at a person's life and what's important to them and for them and making sure we're connecting the two. Now, there's another area of this. What else have we learned, or what else do we need to learn, I should say? And that section's important. Sometimes I think people want to have all the answers and they don't want to guess. And they don't want to have the unknowns, but this is okay. So we make a list of all the things that we still need to learn or we want to learn, and we work at, again, discovering new things from the person. So choice. So we're talking about all this important to, what's important to people, what do they like to do, but every choice someone makes has boundaries, not just for people receiving supports, but every single one of us. And it's brought about by risk. Risk is one of the things. So if you think now during this COVID age, some people think it's too risky to go out and socialize. So they're choosing to stay home where, 2 years ago, they would be out all the time at restaurants and visiting friends. Choices are also imposed, or barriers are imposed by society, laws, and expectations. So you may want the choice on whether or not you wear a mask, but depending on the state you're in, you may be mandated to wear it if you're out in a store or if you're out in a restaurant. So you don't really have a choice anymore. There's boundaries there. It's based on values. So I'm sure you've heard people say, I'm not going to choose to do that because it goes against my values or beliefs. Choices also have ripple effects. So what I choose in my life may affect my relationships. It may affect the work I do, or it may affect where I live. If you want to live in California, but you work in New York, I don't know if that's going to, unless it's virtual, I don't know if that's going to work for you. So these choices have boundaries. And the last thing I want to look at is finances. So resource driven. There's a lot of decisions that we make based on how much resources or how much money we have. And it's, again, same thing for people we're supporting. But what about the current reality? So we already have these natural boundaries that are occurring. Now there's even more, right? There's even more limits on our choices. So let's look at a normal environment. And when I say normal, let's talk pre-COVID. So this is what direct support professionals are helping people do every day. They're helping people stay healthy and safe on the person's terms. So if the person goes to the doctor suggests that they go on a diet or recommend that they go on a diet or just recommend that they live a healthier lifestyle. The direct support professional is working with that person when they get back to their home and saying, how would you like to do this? Do you want to exercise maybe? Would you like to go for hikes? Would you like to look at changing your diet? So it's based on giving information and helping the person make an informed choice. So it's on the person's terms, how they're staying safe and healthy. Staff are also making sure the important twos are in a person's life. They're making sure they're doing things they want to, they're making sure they're with people they want to, they're making sure they go places they want to. And in that interaction, people receiving services start to trust their support staff more. They're thinking they get me, they understand me, they know what's important to me. Their confidence starts to build. So then direct support professionals are able to offer more opportunities, which provides more choices for people. So they're bringing them to new events, to try new activities. They're helping them meet new people, right? And the more the confidence grows in someone, all of a sudden they start looking at, you know what, maybe I want to try a new job. I never thought about it before, but maybe I do. Or maybe I want to move in with my best friend. I never thought it was an option, but I want to try to live with my friend. And this is all helping somebody on a journey, right, to achieve their desired outcomes. This is what direct support professionals do every single day. They help people live in their community, be supported by their community, and contribute to our community, because that's what we all want. But currently, direct support staff can't bring people where they want to go, and they can't help people see who they want to see. And if they can't do that, then it's really hard to expose people to new experiences and to meet new people. And people aren't even allowed to define their own terms of health and safety. They have the CDC telling them, they have the state regulations telling them, they even have provider organization guidelines. So how is a direct support professional supposed to help someone on this journey and add information to a person-centered plan if there's all these restrictions? Well, I say start with looking at rebalancing. Now, when this pandemic first hit, I think we can all agree that it was important for us to stay healthy, but it was also important to us. We didn't want to get COVID. We didn't want to get sick. We didn't want our families and friends to get sick. So we were okay with isolation. So it was pretty balanced. And that's with the people we support as well. But what happened is, and you probably heard of COVID fatigue. What happened is all of a sudden there were more restrictions put on us. You can't do this. You can't go out to restaurants. We're closing restaurants for a period of time. You can't see your grandmother in the nursing home. You can't do that. And all of a sudden, all this we're going to keep you safe business made that important foresight really heavy. We started to realize that all this important to us wasn't happening. And again, it's true for the people you were supporting as well. So direct support professionals need to start asking those questions that they were asking before. They need to start asking them again. What do you like to do? What do you want to do with your time? Because we're going to use our judgment and creativity and innovation, and we're going to help you get that back. We're going to figure out a way to do it. And what they've been relying on a lot is virtual connections, which during this time, that seems to be the go-to. And that's what's working for folks right now. But we want to continue to help people have a voice. We want to ask people, is this working for you? And this is a great tool to use. It's the learning communities. What's working makes sense. What doesn't work, what doesn't make sense. And you see, we look at the staff's, the person's perspective first. That's the most important thing. We may get a staff's perspective. We may also get a family's perspective. We might get manager's perspective. But it's a way for us to look at the things that we're trying in someone's life. Does it work for them or does it not? So we might ask about Zoom. We might ask about that virtual connection. And the person may tell us, it's working because I get to see my family. And if I didn't use Zoom, then I wouldn't be able to see them. So that's working for me. But what doesn't work for me is I don't have any physical contact. And I want to hug my mom. And I want to high five my brother. So that's not working for me. Now, staff's perspective could be Zoom works for the person because they get to see their family member and they wouldn't typically be able to see them. And what's also working for staff is it's great because they can't have physical contact. So that's good. We're going to keep COVID out of the house. So it's great. So you'll see there's a disagreement there, right? The person wants physical contact. The staff is saying it's kind of good. We don't have it. Disagreements aren't bad though. Disagreements is a stepping stone. This is our opportunity to put in place an action plan. How do we help people get what they want? How do we help people honor that important too and minimize risk? And a way to do this and discover, this is the Learning Communities tool 4+1. And this gives us an opportunity to look at things we've tried. So we know Zoom doesn't necessarily work maybe for the person. So what else are we going to try? Let's try having a social distance picnic because the weather is getting nice. So we go out to a park, maybe we put a blanket down for the family and we put a separate blanket that's 6 feet apart or 3 feet apart, whatever the regulation is now. And the person sits there and the staff sits there, the support staff sit there. So now they're physically around one another. What we learn is the person's much happier in person with their family. What we're pleased about is, again, that interaction with their family seems to be more positive. But what we're concerned about is after about 20 minutes in and we're done eating, they want to hug their family and they want to touch their families. So we're a little concerned about that. So what will we try next? And things you might try next is, okay, after lunch, let's come up with some social distancing activities where they can spend more time with their family, like playing catch, because you want to keep distance between someone if you're playing catch, right? You don't want to be on top of them. You want to see how far you can throw the ball. Or maybe you do Frisbee because you want to see how far you can whip the Frisbee. Or you play tennis because it naturally creates a social distance, but people are still able to engage with family. So this is a journey that staff go on with folks they're supporting every single day, and they learn from this. So they use person-centered skills, whether it's the formal skills I just showed you, or it's informally done. And they gather information and they put it into a description of the person. So they're letting the rest of the team know, this is what I'm finding out, right? Then they start figuring out, this stuff is working, we're going to keep it the same. This stuff isn't working, so let's try to change it. And they're also finding out where there's some disagreements, which leads to good action plans. What do we try next? How do we help people find that balance? And from that, from everything that you're trying, you are implementing that stuff you're trying and you're learning from it. And what you need to do with that information, and I cannot emphasize it enough to the direct support professionals in this session, you have to record what you're learning. You have to record the efforts that you're putting in. You have to record the things that are going right along with the things that are going wrong, because you don't want to leave your shift with all that information in your brain. And then everyone else has to learn again what you already have in your head. And also, and I've heard this happen before, people say, I hope that staff never leaves because they have 5 years experience with that person. All of that stuff should be captured. So you should be able to pick up a person's plan, and that plan should be a true reflection of who that person is standing in front of you, because you've utilized direct support professionals and their skills. And they are, to say a direct support professional is essential is putting it lightly. They are a key component to honoring the HCBS rule. So Tanya, can you give folks a little information about the person-centered skill sheets and where they can get maybe these tools if they're interested?
Yes. So the person-centered skill sheets that you see here, we're going to give you a website in just a moment. This is a basic toolkit for person-centered practices that's been developed by the learning community for person-centered practices over many years. Monica shared with you that foundational concept between important to and important for. So it's the first thing here because it's where we start. And the order matters, actually. We always want to start with what is important to people and then really think about that in balance with those things that are important for them. The other things that are here, though, are Monica shared with you discovery skills, management skills, which are about managing our roles in a person's life, and everyday learning skills. The nice thing about printing out these charts and just using them where you're doing your work. So if you are working in the field, you're working in people's homes, you're working at your dining table, have a copy of this available to you, because it reminds you that when you are stuck or when you have a conversation coming up, you might be able to look at a person-centered skill that you've been introduced to and try it out. And we have these sheets set up so that it reminds you what the skill does, some of the possible uses, but there's also a nice blank column there that's saying, you know, I got a meeting coming up with a family next week. I'd like to know who's in that family and how the person relates to them. And maybe I'm curious about culture as well. So I might use the relationship map in that conversation if there's an opportunity, just so I can get to know the person better and reflect on those things that matter most to them. So this is a great way to kind of keep ourselves honest about continuing to try things and learn what works for us. You're going to naturally be better at some skills than others, but this is a way for you to really start to hone your skills in person-centered practices. The other thing I'll say to you is if you don't start to use them now and become more confident and competent, it's harder and harder to approach the skills. So the the HCBS rule, the compliance with that rule can't happen unless we are really getting to know that person on that individual level through these conversations, these type of discovery conversations. But we're also using what we learn to support the person in that learning wheel that Monica just shared with you. So do go and print this out. And if you'll go, this skill chart is actually 2 pages long, but if you'll go one more slide, there's some places you can go to get more information. So the Learning Community for Person-Centered Practices website, tlcpcp.com, is listed there. That is the international community where people are doing this work from birth really to end of life in all kinds of situations and circumstances. Come join us, come meet with us, come pull down forms and practice them, talk with people who are using these skills and really think about how they may fit for the work that you're doing. In addition to that, my company's website, which is sdaus.com, there's more information there about person-centered organizations and the rule and culture and all kinds of things. So we have resources for you. They're free for you to come and use. So please do. And also, if you prefer electronic forms, SDA has editable electronic forms. And then finally, Monica and I really would love to hear from you if you have additional questions about the skills and the intersection with the work that you do. So we've provided our contact information for you as well.
So John, I think that we are at the end. I know there's a couple minutes, so.
Hey, I think thank you so much. You packed so much information into such a, I mean, my head is spinning. I think everybody probably has questions, and I think I would recommend everybody go to the resources in which you've told us to go to explore, and certainly to contact each of you. Thank you both. This is a contribution that I think, if anything, this is going to be, I think, a warning bell to all of us who support direct support professionals. They really need to understand, the ins and outs of the settings rule, but always look at what's important to and what's important for the people they're supporting. That's what I got out of this. And thank you both so much. And happy April Fool's Day. Hopefully nobody will get fooled. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.